Hello, everyone. This is Michael, host of the Pound for Pound Boxing Report and writer for Three Kings Boxing. Just because you don't see fighters trading blows inside of the ring doesn't mean that things to not be discussed outside of the ring. So on April the 20th, yours truly had an exclusive interview with Sulem Urbina. Urbina, 12-0 women's boxer, rising flyweight contender, ranked in the top 10 by the WBC and the WBA. We discussed the myriad of topics, including how she's dealing with COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic, how she uses boxing to deal with issues of mental health, the relationship with her husband and trainer, her thoughts on fighters such as Jackie Nava, Mariana Juarez, Claressa Shields, Cecilia Braekhus, and some interesting thoughts about one Laila Ali. So sit back, get ready to listen to this special interview between yours truly and Sulem Urbina on Pound for Pound Boxing Report and Three Kings Boxing. Welcome. This is Michael W. of Three Kings Boxing and Pound for Pound Boxing Report. And joining me, it is my honor and a pleasure to have Sulem Urbina on the show. Welcome, Sulem. How you doing?
Hi, I'm doing well. Thank you for inviting me. I'm excited to be here with you today.
Again, thanks for joining us. Just because there's not boxing happening in the ring presently, that doesn't mean there's nothing to be discussed outside the ring. Sulem Urbina, women's flyweight contender, 12-0, 2 KOs on the come up from Phoenix, Arizona. Start this discussion with the obvious question: with the sport being grounded right now due to COVID-19 / coronavirus, how have you been dealing with this pandemic? And your career, like the career of all boxers, just been basically put to a halt?
I've never felt so unessential in my life. I mean, it's kind of I understand it, and you have to take all the precautions you can. For some of us, boxing is a way of us expressing ourselves. For myself, I struggle with depression, and it's a way for me to keep my mind busy and stay mentally healthy. It's been very hard being out of the gym. Luckily, I am married to my coach, so I get to do pad work with him here at home. And when all this first started, we were going to the gym, him and I, but we had the cops were called on us, so we had to close the gym. Even though it wasn't open to the public, it was just him and I. Somebody called the cops on us, so we can't go to the gym anymore. I'm doing my running in the mornings as much as I can, and then he comes home and he works me out in the evenings for a little while, some pad work and just some things to stay sharp. You can't really burn yourself out right now because there's not much going on, but just to stay sharp.
I was going to ask you about what got you into the sport, but I want to connect that with what you just said about your issues with depression. Did that play a role in introducing you to the sport? And now that you're in the sport, give more detail into how boxing have helped you deal with that, because I've heard other boxers talk about that too. Depression is not issue of mental health. It's not really a topic that's discussed heavily within boxing. So could you give some insight on that now, please?
Well, ever since I was a kid, I've always been very active. I've always played all the sports in school, and I just can't sit still. I can't sit still. My mind starts wandering and thinking things that I shouldn't, and all kinds of other things. I came to the United States with my family looking for a brighter future. We immigrated here, and it was tough growing up here, not having the right to citizenship or being able to work or do the normal things that any U.S. citizen can do, like going to a national tournament. My brothers started boxing, and I tagged along with them, my older brothers, and I fell in love with the sport. Now, my mother, she's a very traditional Mexican lady, and she said, no way, you know what? You don't need to be in the gym. You don't need to be boxing. You need to be at home helping me with house chores and whatnot. And she took me out of boxing right away, only a year into it, when I was 11 years old. So I didn't get to go back till I actually started driving myself at 17. And I think I'm just a person that can't sit still. And like I said, my mind wanders. And thanks to boxing, I've kept busy. It's something that I've felt ever since I was a kid. And boxing gives me, it helps me breathe. Um, I started boxing, and boxing became the love of my life. And later on, I ended up marrying my coach. And in 2013, my brother Alexis Urbina was murdered. He was only 17 years old, and he was a part of Team USA at 141 pounds. He wanted to go to the Olympics, and so did I. That was the dream that we had together. And it was just one day he's healthy, and the next he's gone because two men broke into our home. And I can seriously say it's the most painful thing I've gone through in my life. Never did I imagine losing my little brother. You think your parents, they're going to leave you one day. And yes, that's the way life is. You don't think a younger sibling will leave you like that. And the way that he did, they hurt him really bad. The two men that broke into our home, and just seeing him there laying in a bed and not even being able to open his eyes, gone from one day to the next. It was very painful. I suffered very, very much for a good 4 years. Through my whole Olympic amateur cycle, I was going through depression. I was eating a lot, and it was a way of me satisfying myself a little bit. And I ballooned up to like 140 pounds in between camps, in between fights. I was struggling very much during competition to maintain my weight, because in the amateurs you weigh in every day. So I would fight, I would win, and I would gain 6 pounds right away that day. And then that same day that I would win, I would have to go cut that weight to weigh in the next day. So it was very hard for me to deal with. And I turned pro, and I finally started, to feel happy again. And I finally started to feel excited again. And, I'm not only doing it for myself, I'm doing it for Alexis. But before, I just used to do it for Alexis, for the memory of my brother. And now it's like I'm feeling happy about boxing again. And it's something that keeps me sane, Boxing keeps me sane.
First and foremost, on behalf of everybody at Three Kings Boxing, everybody at Pound for Pound Boxing Report, I want to say condolences to you and your family on the loss of your brother. And I applaud you from a personal standpoint, how you overcoming the issues with depression, maintaining mental health, and how boxing has played a role into that. You mentioned that you fought for your brother. You're also a product of Phoenix, Arizona, which kind of low-key has a pretty significant boxing history, whether it's David Benavidez, right now current WBC super middleweight champion, and going back into the late 80s, early 90s with fighters like Louis Espinoza and the great Hall of Famer Michael Carbajal. Mm-hmm. Talk about the impact of Phoenix boxing is in terms of you and your career.
When I first started boxing in 2002, boxing was everything here in Arizona. It was the atmosphere you would live in, going to amateur shows and pro shows. There was so much talent here in Arizona. I believe I started in a time when everything was boxing in Arizona. That's all everybody lived. I got to come up as a teenager sparring Elena Baby Doll Reed, who's also from here, from Arizona. And, she helped me out a lot. She motivated me a lot. Carbajal, I see him all the time, and, I see his fights, and he's a great motivation. The fact that you have somebody right next to you that actually made their dream come true and becoming a world champion, it's like you can hold that dream for a second. You can actually feel it and touch it, and I'm there. I feel myself that I will be there. David is a very special case because he's my friend. We grew up together in boxing. He was this kid that was a chubby little kid that honestly they didn't pay much attention to. Nobody really believed in him. The people around him, they only paid attention to the older brother, Junior Benavides. And David comes up and he starts growing, and he actually used to spar me when we were little. He used to help me out. So it's great now that
Oh, wow.
yeah, he used to help me move around, and he's just a great kid. And now seeing him, he started developing and growing, and he decided to turn pro. And he didn't have that much amateur experience because his weight and his age, there was hardly any kids around at that time. So he started losing the weight. His physique changed, everything. He just really, really wanted it. And it's very motivating for me because David's up there. He's, if not the best, one of the best out there right now. And I know the kid is going to be making history.
Are there any fighters on the come up now in whether in Phoenix or in the state that we should keep an eye on?
Arizona has a lot of good fighters. There's Alexis Azueta. He's a super flyweight. He's very, very talented. There's also a boxer. She's still amateur. Her name's Leslie Hernandez. She's very talented. She's actually thinking about going into MMA, and she has it. She has the heart for MMA. She's somebody definitely to keep an eye on. I've heard that there's a kid. I know Luis Olivares is I believe 12-0, and he was under 50 Cent management or promotion. Something happened where he had to stop, but the kid is phenomenal, and I've heard he's making a comeback. So that's somebody you should really, really look into.
Oh, thank you. You just talked briefly about how you got into the sport and whatever. For those not informed of you and your early career, could you give some insight into like your early amateur accomplishments and whatnot?
Well, I started boxing when I was 11, but my mother didn't allow it, so I didn't box for that long. But I was always around the sport because my brothers actually fought. So when I turned 17, I started attending a local boxing club, and actually I became pretty good. And when I was 19, I decided to leave the United States to be able to fight at a national tournament, because the fact that I wasn't a citizen in the U.S., I couldn't fight at any ranking or national tournament, and I really wanted to do that. So I left the United States without being able to come back. And I stayed in Mexico for a while, and I became a part of the Mexican national team. I'm a 4-time Mexican national champion. I did many international fights. Some of the ones that stand out the most are I have a silver medal at the Central American and Caribbean Games. I participated in the Pan Am Games. I qualified for them. I went to the America's Olympic qualifiers, and I competed a lot international. It's something that the amateurs gave me. Got to travel all around the world, and for that I'm very grateful.
This is Michael W. for Three Kings Boxing, Pound for Pound Boxing Report. Now, being joined by Sulem Urbina, 12-0 flyweight, really on the come up, ranked in the top 10 by the WBC and the WBA at flyweights. From the clips I've seen of you, I view you as a woman who can do a little bit of everything. You've shown the ability to fight inside and out. I like the jab when you use it. You have a kind of funky way of throwing that right hand, which is straight down the pipe, connects a lot. It's a little bit off kilter, but I like the effect of it. For those who have not seen you fight, how would you describe your fighting style?
I've been asked that question many times, and I honestly, I think the one that most describes me is boxer puncher. I mean, I can box, and I'm a little bit of a brawler too. So, I mean, that's the one that you'll see the most, because that's what I enjoy the most. But I'm able to do a little bit of everything. I can box, I can move around, I can be slick. I choose to brawl a little bit, and just exciting, you know. I'm pretty fortunate that I'm a good puncher with both hands. So I don't rely on just one punch, and I can throw from any angle. So
given the sudden time off is always it's always good for an athlete to kind of sit back and reflect. Um, because of that, have you worked on anything specifically um, during this downtime to kind of improve on maybe any possible weaknesses in what you bring to the table?
definitely, I think that far too often boxers after they fight they take so much time off, and you know they don't get back into camp until they have another fight day, and I think that's wrong. For me, I stay in the gym most of the time. You know, that time, that downtime, like you say, that you have, you don't have to rush to get fight ready is very important, because you get to work on all those little things that you need work on. For me, you know, I need to work on my head movement a lot more. I have really good defense. I keep my hands up very well, and you know I move around very well. But I need to actually get better at staying there, staying within reach, and getting away from the punches. My waist bending, like they call it in Mexican style, the bending that Julio Cesar Chavez Sr. used to do. I need to work a lot more on turning my punches better so that I have more power, and a lot more footwork. I mean, I always take it back to the basics. I think that's the fundamentals of everything in boxing.
I want to thank a couple of people behind the scenes, both from Three Kings Boxing and Truth and Facts About Sports, as well as your husband, trainer, Andrew Soto. Talk about how Andrew, your husband, has influenced you in terms of not just what you bring to the table in the ring, but in terms of outside the ring and how to deal with this boxing life.
Well, you know, it's I can't say it's easy having your husband as your coach, but it definitely is a plus. I mean, I have my coach with me all the time, and he can train me always. He always has an eye on me. Yes, it can get kind of stressful sometimes, but he's very good at, you know, dividing home and gym. And when I have to work, it's time to work, and when I don't, you know, I get to relax. He's my biggest supporter. If it wasn't because of him, I don't know if I'd still be boxing, because I mean it's very difficult to have to work and do everything else and take care of my parents. And thanks to him, I'm able to live this dream. You know, I get to just focus on my training, and he wants it as much as I do. I can't imagine being with somebody else, and you know, just being able to be the person that I am. I know boxing is what I do. I have a lot of interviews. I go to a lot of get-togethers, and you know, a lot of meet and greets. And you can't have a man that is jealous. And my husband isn't jealous. He understands this. He knows what this is, and he's very supportive of me. I mean, I go to weigh-ins and I weigh in a bikini. I can't imagine another man being the same way and being completely okay with that. You know, he understands this, and he knows that this is what I like, and he supports me all the way.
It's good to hear that your partner understands the dynamics of what you do, and he separates the home life from the business in terms of the sport itself. You mentioned how you fought for the Mexican national team and how you tried out for the U.S. team, amateur team, in terms of the Olympics. Now, as a professional, even though you reside in Phoenix, you moved there at the age of 4, I believe you said. All of your fights have been in Mexico. In doing research, I've read that you're treated better as a woman professional fighter in Mexico as opposed to here in the United States. Could you give some details on why do you feel that way?
Well, I represented Mexico. I never represented Team USA. I've always represented Team Mexico, and well, I believe I lived in Mexico City for so long, and I got to see the culture and the way athletes are treated in Mexico. First off, as an amateur, I got a lot of play out with the media out there, and they see you and they love you right away. They treat you differently. Amateur boxers that are on the Mexican national team, they're looked at differently. You're treated like you're a world champion already. You show up to an amateur event and, you're taking pictures, you're signing autographs. It's amazing. And the fact that you're a woman and you're getting that attention, it just means a lot. Then I finally decided to turn pro. I turned pro and I debut on national TV as a co-main event. I mean, out of my 10 fights that I had in Mexico, I think 9 were televised. And I'm sorry, 11 fights that I had in Mexico, 9 were televised. And I had a lot of promotion. I come out on commercials, all sorts of things, billboards. And then I come to the U.S. and, I'm just, not a lot of people, I'm not treated the same way. In Mexico, I show up at an event and you see the swarm of people coming to me. And in the U.S., it's not like that. It's just, I believe USA is barely playing catch up with women's boxing. In Mexico, at least every single card on the weekend on TV has a woman's card, a woman's fight, and it's something that USA is barely playing catch up with.
Why do you think that is? Because you mentioned how the popularity in Mexico, women's boxing is also very popular in places like Argentina, in countries like Germany, Japan, China, particularly when it comes to the smaller ladies. Here, it's just specific to maybe 1-2 fighters, a Claressa Shields here, and basically that's it. Why do you think the U.S. treatment is just so behind, and so as opposed to other countries who are more, for lack of a better word, progressive in terms of how they view women's boxing, how they appreciate and respect women's boxing? But
I think when I was a kid, I used to watch Christy Martin, the coal miner's daughter, Laila Ali a little bit. I was a huge fan of Christy Martin, so I used to see her on TV, and it was. I feel like after that, everything died out, and there wasn't much. So then I get into boxing, and I start living in Mexico, and you just notice the difference. You just feel the difference. I think it has a lot to do with culture. I think they're a little more accepting of it. Like I said, I think Claressa Shields and, Michaela Mayer and Katie Taylor, Marlena Esparza, I'm a part of that group that came out of the amateurs. I didn't win an Olympic medal. I didn't qualify to the Olympics, but it was the first time that elite amateurs actually decided to turn pro, because before, honestly, when I was amateur, we used to look at the pros and we didn't think there was much to it. We didn't think it was worth it because they didn't push it as much. So Claressa Shields gets those 2 gold medals, and she made history, and of course the spotlight's on her. So she's a big name that started bringing it about, getting on Showtime, and Katie Taylor signed with Matchroom, so that's another big promoter, and then Michaela Mayer with Top Rank, Marlene with Golden Boy. These major promoters finally decided that women do have it and are putting and showcasing these women in the shows, in the main cards, and that's what's benefiting all of us, because at the end of the day, if you put a good woman's fight on there, other people are going to pay attention, and that's what we need. The more these mainstream promoters put us on their cards and make good fights, the more women's boxing will become more popular in the U.S.
Not just put you on these cards, actually pay you a decent purse as well.
they're paying pretty well. I mean, Golden Boy, Matchroom, Top Rank, they're doing a good job with the boxers that they have. The female boxers that they have, they're taking care of them. And they're giving us the opportunity.
Indeed, indeed. Your fights have been in Mexico. I have to ask you this. Mexico is really a hotbed for ladies boxing. Um, many great champions, whether it's Enrique, the light flyweight champion, um, Mariana Juarez, uh, Jockey Nava. We were doing some discussion before we began taping. Uh, Nava and Juarez, before this pandemic and before the sport was put on halt, they were finally getting ready to face each other after all of these years. Uh, Talk about that, and I have to ask you about maybe a little bit of beef here between you and one Juarez, you know.
um, Jackie Nava is a good friend of mine. Mariana, I've worked with her. I've sparred with her when I was amateur. She helped me out once. I think with the fight, Nava has the better skills. I think Mariana Juarez tends to, hold a little and complain a lot, and when she's the one that's being dirty. So for me in that fight, I'm going completely toward with Nava.
Team Nava all day, huh?
Team Nava all day. I think she'll win. And yes, I said it. Easy work.
You heard it, folks. You heard it. Again, this is Michael W., Three Kings Boxing and Pound for Pound Box Report. I'm being joined by Sulem Urbina. You fight at, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna add the second part of the question. So Mariana Juarez and I have worked together before, and then I turned pro. Everything was fine when I was amateur, and then I turned pro, and I heard some things that she said that I didn't particularly like, and I just, I left it at that. And Jamilet Mercado became a world champion a few months ago, and I believe Mariana Juarez tweeted to her, "You're not a world champion till you fight with me. You can't be a real world champion until you fight with me." And, that really bothered me. I mean, as women, especially as her being around for as long as she has been, she should be supporting other women. So, you know what? We kind of got into it. I let her know what I thought and kind of had a little headbutted a little bit. So, yeah, Team Jackie.
I like how you put it. I like how you put it. Headbutted a little bit. Let's talk about you and specifically the flyweight division. You fight at 112. Question one, how far do you think you have to go, or how long do you think it will take for you to reach to the point where you're ready to compete for a world title? That's first question. Two, even though you fight at 112, is it set in stone that you want to fight for a world title at 112 pounds, or are you willing to move up to 115 to fight, say, the likes of a Guadalupe or Martinez, Guanani over in Argentina, Osorio, who's the interim champion at WBC version at 115, or is there a possibility that you're willing to move down to 108 pounds to, say, seek an opportunity against Bob or Yesenia Gomez, the likes of those kind of ladies?
Well, the first question, it was a lot. I was like, I got really thinking. I forgot what the first question was.
How far away do you think you are to reaching and competing at world championship level?
So, so far I've only had 6-round fights. I don't know why. That was a problem that I had with my last promoter, that they weren't moving me up to 8, and I was ready for 8 rounds. I just started working with Golden Boy, so they're gonna have me fight a few fights at 8 rounds, and then from there we'll see. But I mean, if a good opportunity comes for a world title and I'm able to get ready for it, we're gonna take it, because opportunities don't come quite often, and sometimes you just gotta run with them. And as for 112, that's the division that I'm at, and that's the division I want to be in. I want to win a world title there at 112. I know I've sparred the WBC world champion, Ibet Zamora, and I think that would be a great fight. There's Naoko Fujioka, who's a great fighter. There's the Argentina that I believe she just got the WBO because Nicola Adams retired. And,
Lopez, yes.
Yeah. And I'm not sure. I think another Mexican got the IBF. I'm not sure.
I believe her name is Paula Udica. I think her name is, yeah.
Yes.
Argentina.
She's
not Mexico.
Argentina?
She's from Argentina. Yeah.
Okay. So I mean, I'd like to stay at 112 and fight at 112. I have thought about it. I want to maybe move up to 115, and if it's possible, try 118 also. But that's after I conquer the 112 division, and then we can think about the other ones. I will not move down from 112. That's the lowest I could go. I mean, I have to really discipline myself to make 112. And, if I was to go to 108, it's not just about making the weight. It's about being able to feel good and feel competitive at 108. I mean, I think I would just be too drained, and I don't even know if I can touch 108. I've never touched 108. I think I was 107 pounds when I was a sophomore in high school. And since then, I haven't been anywhere under 110. So, I mean, under 112, it's not an option anymore. I'm older. I've grown a little more and have more muscle on me. So under 112, no way. Up 115 and 118 after I conquer 112.
I'm get on a bit of a touchy, controversial subject. A lot of news was made within women's boxing in the aftermath of Franchon Desiree Cruz and her bout against Alejandro Jimenez. Jimenez won. She upset Cruz, but in the aftermath, she tested positive for a PED. Earlier this year, I believe you signed on to the WBC Clean Boxing Program. Given that backdrop, months after that particular fight, your thoughts now with time to reflect and digest on that whole situation in terms of the controversy that was Desiree Cruz and Jimenez?
It was a very entertaining fight. I think Franchon fell into Jimenez's fight. Peds or no peds, I think Franchon could have beat her. It's sad. Yeah, I mean, it's as an athlete that has boxed for so long, you sit there and you think boxers get hurt as it is without using any legal substance. Now, using something like that, it's not right. I don't think it's right. To me, from my perspective, I believe Franchon should have received not only the WBO, but the WBC. But let's just hope she's just first in line and she's able to get that world championship again. I enrolled into the clean boxing program because now I'm ranked number 4 and it's mandatory. And at the end of the day, I want that belt. And I believe in the WBC. I believe in the WBC family. And you know what? My division, I'm ready for the world champion at 112.
And your thoughts on this kind of back and forth between Claressa and Cecilia Braekhus in terms of the impossibility of a fight, and Claressa saying that they could have got more money, and Braekhus saying there just wasn't the money in the fight, and DAZN offered a better deal. Your reaction to all of that?
I love both ladies. I believe there's nobody that can beat Claressa. If I'd like to see a fight with Savannah Marshall and Claressa Shields, I believe they're two elite athletes that, have skill and are, it's going to be a great fight. I think that's going to be a great fight. Her and Cecilia Braekhus going about, at the end of the day, if Claressa was to fight her, there would always be something said like Cecilia Braekhus was too small or something like that. But I think they do a good job selecting or picking Cecilia Braekhus' opponents, and I don't think they're gonna put her against a monster like Claressa Shields.
Selecting. I kind of hit something there.
I mean, I hope Cecilia Braekhus fights Katie Taylor maybe. And then that way you're like, hey, you know what? She's fighting somebody that, came up through the amateurs and, is really one of the greatest female boxers of all time. It's a different story than some of the fighters that she's been fighting that really, no disrespect, but aren't at the skill level that she's at. I mean, I think the fight where HBO post off the show with Cecilia, that was a good fight. That was a really good fight. But other than that, there's been some fights that haven't been great bouts. So there's other world champions. There's other boxers that are better, and she could face better opposition.
Yeah, I would like to see Braekhus fight the winner of Taylor and Serrano, and I would like to see Shields fight the lady you mentioned, Savannah Marshall, or Raquel Miller, who's a very, very good junior middleweight who should get more attention and should get bigger and better fights. I just think she's that good.
I would like to see that, and I saw Raquel and Claressa Shields have fought each other in the amateurs.
Yes.
I don't think I just think Clarissa's that monster, I don't think anybody can beat her. And as far as Ali, no disrespect, but Claressa Shields isn't a last name. Claressa Shields has done the work. She's done the work. She's earned her stripes, And Laila Ali was, Ali's daughter. That's why she was up there. And she's older.
Wow.
She's older.
You gotta draw some attention for that.
She's older. There's no reason for Claressa to fight her. At the end of the day, if Claressa beats her, they're going to say, hey, Ali wasn't in her prime. So it's just, it's no good.
Getting ready to wrap things up here, but I do have a couple of questions before we begin ending things. I have to ask you about Wilder Fury 2. The result sent shockwaves all over. Not necessarily that Fury beat him, but the way he beat him, or should I say beat him up. Months later now, or a couple months later now, your reaction to that fight, and do you think that Wilder should go right back to a trilogy, or do you think he should have a tune-up fight or two? Because for many people, or for damn near everybody, he got exposed and exposed bad in that fight.
I believe that Fury won the first fight. They gave it a draw, but to me, he won that fight. He outboxed him. He outclassed him. There was those 2 knockdowns that hurt him, but I still believe he edged it out. He pulled out a win. And he just came in and he adjusted and he dominated. And, from the beginning, from the first bell, you could see it in Wilder's face. He was intimidated. Wilder's a strong man, and he's hungry. And, he's probably going through some issues in his head, and he wants to fight right away. And you never know. This is boxing. Nothing is written. So he could come back from this, He could come back from this and beat Wilder. Beat Fury, but it's going to be very difficult. To me, from my perspective, I believe he should have, just taken another fight, an easier fight, built up again, and, not rushed into fighting Fury right away, because there obviously, like everybody saw, there is a lot of things that Wilder can work on to better himself. And, you know, a lot of people started calling him a one-trick pony and saying that he only had that right hand. And he's somebody that he has to learn and develop other qualities. And I believe that he can do it. He just needs time to do it.
Going to end this on a bit of a fun note. During this time off, many people have been putting up videos on places like TikTok and whatever. You participated in something called #WomenStrong with Franchon Cruz and Claressa and all of that, in which you showed yourself boxing and whatnot, and then the next image of you looking quite attractive along with Claressa and Heather Hardy and Franchon Cruz. How did you ladies get all that together?
So Franchon has just such a creative, inspiring mind. I tweeted something that I was super bored, and she messaged me. She said, "You know what? I can help with that." And then she spoke to me about that idea that she wanted to do a video, and I didn't quite understand it. She told me how she wanted the transition, but I'm one of those people that I don't really understand social media too much. I mean, I'll post, but I don't really know how to play with Skype or TikTok or anything. I don't understand it. And so I didn't quite understand how the video would come about with the transitions. Franchon just put it all together, and she did a heck of a job, and she's just very creative, and it was very fun to watch. And we got a lot of attention into, the women boxers, because for some reason people believe that if you're a boxer, you can't be feminine at the same time. And it's completely wrong, beauty isn't fighting boxing, I mean, we can be beautiful and we can be boxers too.
Indeed. I think we're going to start closing things on that note. You can find this video on Sulem Urbina's Twitter page. For those who want to follow you in your career on social media, Twitter, Instagram, and whatnot, let the folks know where they can find you.
So Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, all of them are at Sulem Urbina. Just keep it simple with my name, and just, follow me.
And one last note for those who are your fans, your followers, one last final word in terms of what you're doing right now, and kind of message in terms of how to deal under this current pandemic.
It's very difficult to have to stay home all the time, and we have to do the best that we can. Just keep a positive mind. I am a strong believer in prayer. I pray a lot, and I speak a lot to God. I try to read. I watch a lot of 30 for 30s on ESPN. They're always entertaining, and I believe, watching things like that as an athlete, you learn from, things that have happened to others. And, enjoy the quality time at home, the downtime. There's a lot of things that, you can't do when you're up and about. So maybe do that deep cleaning in your house that you've always wanted to do. Sit on the couch and just be a couch potato, watch that series that you've missed out, and just, keep a positive mind.
And again, I want to thank Sulem for joining us. This is Michael W. from Three Kings Boxing, Pound for Pound Boxing Report. We were joined by Sulem Urbina, 12-0 flyweight on the come up. Again, I want to thank Sulem's husband, Andrew, as well as both from Truth and Facts About Sports, and the lieutenant of Three Kings Boxing. Again, thank you for joining us, Sulem. We have to do this again sometime.
Definitely, anytime. Thank you guys for having me. I mean, it's always fun talking boxing.
Okay, thank you.